Welcome to Tech Unscripted, where we get candid about the toughest problems in tech and the real solutions that people are implementing. I'm Meg Diaz. I'll be your host today, and we're going to be diving into the heart of digital resilience, which is all about how organizations keep themselves securely up and running in the face of any disruption. Now, today I'm joined with this great panel here, so let's start by doing some intros. So we'll start off with Ralph Riley from World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. So tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Nice to meet you, Meg. Thanks for having me. My name is Ralph Riley. Work for WWE. I'm the Director of Broadcast IT Systems, and I help manage the network infrastructure for WWE's TV broadcast environment. I used to travel with The Road, where we had our own infrastructure and our own TV trucks as well. We do still work with them with their infrastructure, but basically it's one big family of WWE assets, whether it's at our TV studio or on the road in the truck or in our corporate side of the building. I help manage and integrate all those systems together within our environment as well.
Very nice. And you talk about different environments. I know Dexter King we have from Carnival Cruise Lines. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me, Meg. My name is Dexter King. So I am a senior net DevOps engineer for Carnival Cruise Line specifically. So we have the Carnival Corporation, but we have all of the sister brands as well. So my team focuses strictly on automating network devices for Carnival Cruise Line specific.
Excellent. And then we also have Evan Minster.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Evan Minster, thanks for having me. I'm Director of Production Infrastructure for Customers Bank. My responsibilities, I run the network, which firewalls, remote access, cloud, a lot of cloud services, Azure networking.
Excellent.
And we're used to some issues. We have third-party vendors, so digital resilience is an important topic.
Excellent. Well, we're going to get more into that. But first, I want to start off with a little bit of icebreakers. So let's hear from each of you. What do you think is your superpower when you're dealing with a crisis?
Well, for me, I think in wrestling terms, my superpower is to powerbomb any network threats that may be coming into our environment. Any network anomalies will get an elbow drop from me. I know it's a little bit tacky, but we like to incorporate that with WWE's core values, which is to put smiles on people's faces. But in all seriousness, anything that might be an anomaly, anything that might be perceived as some sort of network contention or anything that is latency driven, that is our main priority to stop on our side.
Yeah, well, working for a cruise line that's specifically tailored around fun, I try to make it to where if we get involved with any situation that we try to be lighthearted about it and try not to take things too serious, no matter what the level of the problem may be. So we try to incorporate fun in every aspect.
I think from a superpower, being responsible for the network, I need to be involved with everything, but a lot of times I'd say I'm there for moral support because we know the network, it can't be the network.
Never.
Never, no.
Yeah.
What about, okay, another one for you. What is the last system alert you got on vacation?
Well, the last system alert on vacation, unfortunately, I do remember that a little bit all too clearly. It was one of our ISPs was having an issue. And we do have dual ISP connections, but unfortunately it was going up and down at the same time, so it was causing a little bit of a flop between the two ISPs. And I was on vacation. Fortunately, I had a computer with me to remote in, and I have a great team back in the office that was able to assist, but it was on vacation, so I do remember it.
That's tough.
Being centered around automation, it's very easy for me to push those alerts to someone else and make it somebody else's problem. So we'll call it, I don't necessarily get alerts on vacation because it gets rerouted to someone else. We'll put it that way.
That works. That's a good.
That's the approach to have.
Of automation.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, see, some automation.
I was trying to think what's vacation. Not really on vacation, but I think one that comes to mind is third-party vendor CrowdStrike had their outage. I was getting notified at before 4 a.m. because it appeared to be a network issue because all these servers are down. It can't be the servers, but it turned out to be CrowdStrike. So had to do troubleshooting at early morning before coffee time.
that can be tough. Yeah, without the coffee is extra challenging for sure. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some of the recent disruptions that you've had. And, when you think of your last major service disruption or an unplanned outage, what were the causes and the impacts? Give us a sense of that for the team.
Sure. So unfortunately for us, ISP lines, whether that's internet or also point-to-point fiber, which is a very big component of how we operate business for WB, they do tend to have issues. So one of those, before we moved into our brand new office and facility in Stamford, Connecticut, our old facility only had a single ISP connection. And that is also used for transferring our content. So WB is really big about transferring content to other places across the globe, whether that's for redistribution to our TV vendors or it's to our television trucks to send a file that was maybe manipulated or edited on our side. So unfortunately, we did have an issue where there was an ISP outage, and it really focused our attention to what can we do to not put all of our eggs in one basket if there's a particular way in which we have workflows sent to that ISP. So we were able to manage a way in which we were able to send data using those point-to-point dark fiber lines, which wasn't ideal, but thanks to our close relationships with our vendors and those ISPs, we were able to do that relatively quickly, so the content was able to be delivered. But for us, it had us scratching our heads and saying, what else can we do to ensure or be more proactive if we determine that one of those events may or may not occur? So for us, it's saying, okay, what do we have in place that can kind of give us those results, give us that information? And then what else is out there that can kind of enhance what we have and maybe put it at a software application level for us? So for us at WWE, we were able to integrate Thousand Eyes and their solution to proactively detect those anomalies and say, hey, you know what, maybe this outage is occurring at one of the ISP's hops that are northbound as opposed to our point-to-point, which has certain connections which are southbound geographically. And what we're able to do during that particular instance, because we were able to have a demo of Thousand Eyes at that point, is we're able to contact our ISP and say, hey, we think that your colo has this problem which is causing the internet outage. And their tier one said, we have no idea. You're the first to report this. And fortunately, we were able to send out a link through Thousand Eyes that said, well, here's the data that we have right now. This is pointing to your facility in Boston, Massachusetts. Can you guys take a look? And of course, we were able to get back from them a little bit later on after they confirmed it with their team. And they said, you know what, you're right. And then they sent out a mass alert saying that there were other circuits and customers affected as well. So from there, believe it or not, we actually became full-time Thousand Eyes customers. And we've been able to integrate a lot of those proactive testing with their agents as well. So we built a really robust platform of detecting all of our circuits if there's going to be an issue, and the time to resolve that has been quite quick.
That's great. So
Yeah, it's funny because you think about it, looks really good for you, for your company, because you're using a product to be able to find information. Doesn't look good for that ISP though.
No, it doesn't. But you know what? At the end of the day, I think it was all about just having them fix it as soon as possible. But yeah, you know what? Maybe it was a learning lesson for them, to go back and say, hey, how can we get this, acclimated in terms of us knowing where our issue is faster? Yeah.
I think that kind of leads to observability being a big priority when it comes to being more resilient and having resilient systems. So for us, obviously we have giant floating buildings out in the middle of the ocean. Latency can become a problem. So it's really good to have some sort of visibility as to what might happen. That way you can be more proactive. So that's one thing that we've tried to incorporate too, is trying to be more on top of the alerts rather than finding out after the fact. So yeah, I could definitely understand.
Yeah.
what sorts of unplanned downtimes, things like that, have you encountered? What are some of the things that you've done to address it?
So much like everybody, we do everything we can to avoid any kind of outages because, outages for us is very severe because, we can't just, hop in the car and go to the building that's having the outage because the building is quite literally in the middle of the ocean. So disruption-wise, though, the latency can be an issue for us. We've really started looking more into Starlink and getting that WAN connection at a higher speed. So, that's one thing that we've been doing.
Evan, how about for you? How have things been from that perspective and dealing with unplanned outages? What were some of the causes and impacts that you've seen?
Yeah, a lot of our outages tend to be with third parties. We have to work with different companies, our vendors, for services. A lot of times has been dealing with their outages and how we mitigate what's happening to our company. Because we have customers and we need to we're moving money. So if the customers, they don't see it as, well, it's your third party having a problem. No, they see it as us having the problem, even though it's not us. And directly on those, we don't have control over our third parties to say, you need to fix it right now. We're on the horn with them and that's all we can do. So, I mean, we can put leverage on them, but it's still, they have to fix it. So a lot of times we're looking at how we can mitigate with the vendors.
That's a good point, Evan, because when we have ISP or third-party data outages, a lot of the times that affects something that may be on the road. So for us, our production trucks on the road are filming and broadcasting that live content. So we have executive producers and directors who don't know where that issue is coming from, and that alert from them saying something can't be delivered or something can't be received goes down to our tech team in the truck, and then they eventually come back to us and say, what's the problem? You guys need to fix it, things like that. So it is really important, like you said, to work with those vendors and even have better relationships. Maybe that's what it comes from it, to say, hey, this is where the problem is. We know it. Maybe our tech team, maybe our executive producers don't necessarily know exactly that it's a vendor problem, but we have to represent the vendor in a certain way. So what can we do? Like, are there more tools? Are there more advancements that we can say to the vendor, this is where it is, this is where the problem is happening, this is why it happened, here's all the data I have, please work with me now. So I think that's very important to have a very close vendor relationship, especially for those times of need.
Yeah, and one of the things we're looking at right now is internal communication. Because, same thing with you. There are people in the street doing their job. In my case, it might be bank tellers. So, when something is down, what do they know? Being able to find a way that we can internally communicate with them of like, listen, it might be this vendor over here that's a problem, so we know wires transfers might be impacted. So that way the tellers are aware.
And are there things that, and you mentioned a couple of areas where, being more proactive or building those better relationships with the third parties, are there any lessons learned that you've had about how to do that? How do you build those better relationships? Are there things that you found work better?
I think for us at WWE is having more of an open cadence with the technical team at wherever or whatever vendor we're working with. Because a lot of historically, for us and maybe some other companies, it's kind of been, you guys operate as you can, you guys kind of do your work, we trust you. And I think it's important to have trust, especially with vendor relationships, but it's also important to see how you manage that trust, from a very specific level. And for us, if we now have regularly or at least quarterly cadence calls with the technical team and also our account managers. And what that says from our perspective is, okay, we've had, these connections up and running for, 30, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. And then we can go back into a tool like ThousandEyes or from one of their platforms and say, hey, here's a report of the amount of latency we've seen, the amount of outage time that we've seen. What can you do to help prevent or minimize that time for us? Because, maybe it's a small amount of time and maybe we weren't doing a live production, but we don't want that to skew into times where we are doing a live production because we're consuming and sending content pretty much all the time at our facilities.
When we think about the data, right? Because there's so much data being generated across all these different systems. And you think about from the network, from different applications, from a security perspective, and actually being able to bring that data together to see what's happening. And you talk about like, okay, you've got your data within your organization, but then you have third parties that have their data. What sort of impact have you seen from actually getting a better view across all those different domains, whether it's within your company or with third parties? What kind of impact have you seen there?
I think for us, security comes to mind. Being a bank, we have to worry about money. We have to worry about the security controls. We use Splunk. We actually used it before Cisco bought Splunk, so we've been using it for a while. And we feed as much as we can in there so that we can correlate the data. Because data as by itself doesn't mean much if you don't know what's going on. And when you look at like logins, for instance, people are logging in somewhere. Are they coming from a certain place, logins? Are they coming from a certain place too many times? When you look at that data, you end up, from a security standpoint, understanding, could there be a problem? Does it need an analyst to look deeper into what's happening? And having Splunk is great because we can do quick searches. Makes the SOC team work quicker.
And do you see that also impacting with how the SOC team works with the networking team and other teams across the organization?
Oh yeah, because the SOC team, we have to work together. They're looking at anomalies, trying to find problems, and if they find something, they're coming straight to me to say, we have this, something needs to be shut down. When, for instance, IP addresses coming and they happen to be coming from, say, Russia, those need to get shut down right away.
Dexter, how about you? What have you seen across, like working across different teams and different domains?
It can become really difficult because we have a lot of sister brands. So we try to work pretty closely with them and try to use that data as a corporation as a whole. So we have to be pretty cautious with going from one brand to the next. But we try to, since my team focuses mostly on automation, we try to make automations to where it can be reused no matter what the incoming data might be. So the actual ingestion of the data is pretty much a high priority for us, and the cleanliness of it, because data can be cluttered, and with the automations we write, if you get bad data in, you're going to get bad automation. The automation is going to have bad data out. So data ingestion is a big deal for us.
Yeah, for us at WWE, it's always been security by obscurity in the past. And with recent events such as CrowdStrike and SolarWinds in the past, it's kind of brought to our forefront and said, what can we do to acclimate all this data into a singular platform, but amongst various teams? And these teams that were kind of separated by their nature are now kind of ingested all as one. So for us, we are also Splunk customers as well. And for us to be able to have a SIEM that takes that data and can stitch anomalies, whether it's from our firewalls, whether it's from our networking, or whether it's from EDR solutions, is incredibly important for us because we actually are a small team. So even though we operate many different areas, many different silos, we are a small team. So to have something that can automate that for us, and to use a service like an MDR that can say, hey, we found something from this playbook that may be anomalous, check this out, versus the millions and thousands of logs that you could possibly get from a collector like Splunk is incredibly important for us. And that's where the synergy happens. The synergy happens when you have those correlated alerts that are pinpointed and produced at a level which makes sense as opposed to just nonsense. And then those teams can come together, whether it's on the network and security side, and say, hey, this is a real event. Let's get to it. Let's activate our security playbook. Or no, maybe this is network related. Maybe this is just a small little, false positive. Let's patch it up and be done with it. So that's where the teams have really come together on our side, more so than ever before.
So we've talked a little bit about what you all have been doing to date. But if you think about the future, what are you doing to really help prepare against future disruptions? Dexter, you want to start?
I think that one might be a little bit more in my wheelhouse. So, as I mentioned, working for an automation team, we're more about trying to get things up to a certain standard. So automations, making things standardized, using the like a golden configuration to try to get things to where you don't have as much variation down the road. Because once these ships, they go out to sea, we try not to do as much on them because we don't want to disrupt anything. So it's really about making sure once they go into what's called a dry dock process, which is basically the maintenance portion of it. So once they go into dry dock, that's where the bulk of our work gets done. And the goal is really to try to get them up to where we don't necessarily need to change anything until they go back into dry dock again. So the preventative maintenance is really what my team mostly focuses on, and it's all through automation. So standardization and getting it up to code, so to say.
It's very interesting that you say that because for us, with our television production trucks, they are traveling the road 52 weeks a year. So there is very little downtime that we have on the road as opposed to the sea to be able to do maintenance, preventions, upgrades, you name it, for the systems that are on the truck, for the network gear that's on the truck. Yeah.
So funny enough, I actually worked for a university long ago, and we dealt with TV trucks for sporting events. So I'm pretty familiar with it, and I know that they really, once they park the truck, everything starts getting hooked up, you got to be ready to go. So I know they have a very slim margin for any kind of changes or any kind of maintenance that might need to happen. So I've seen that firsthand.
How about you, Evan?
Mine's a little different because we're pretty static. We don't have trucks that go out. We don't have ships that are out there. Pretty much we have branch offices, and branch offices don't move. So they're kind of the same thing. But what we don't have is we don't have IT folks at all the branch offices. And we're currently expanding. So having formalized installations, having networks that are the same everywhere, something that we can support is definitely one thing we're looking at doing. So that way it's a standard thing to work on.
That makes sense. And we talked a little bit about this, the impact that it can have on your customers. And you all have kind of different types of customers that you're working with. So let's talk a little bit. How does the performance and some of the downtime, these incidents that can happen, how does that impact your customers? Evan, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, our customers, they don't care the behind the scenes. We have to worry about money. And money is an important thing, and if it doesn't move, that's a problem. So regardless of what the reason is, we need to make sure that the customers are taken care of.
Because they can take their money elsewhere.
Obviously they can. We're not the only bank out there. I don't know if you know this, but the customers, they can go to other banks. I think one of the differentiators we have is that we have to try to have that personal experience with the customers. So we have sales staff that are talking with them to try and keep them in the loop. But then the important thing is that the sales staff are in the loop.
Yeah, like the internal communication, like you had talked about, when there are issues, how do you communicate, prep them to be able to have the conversation with the customers the right way?
If we're having an issue IT-wise and they're not aware, they could be going, is this a cybersecurity incident? And we have to worry about, we're being attacked. They don't know, especially if a customer's coming to them and going, I heard, because rumor is one of the things that moves too quick. And if the customer is going, are you having a cybersecurity incident? Well, then that could suddenly turn into, we're having a cybersecurity incident, and that will be a loss of trust, and that's when they pull their money and go.
I mean, customer satisfaction is a huge deal for us too. So, they might take the money out of Evan's bank, but then they're going to spend it with our company because they want to go on a vacation. And they might want to unplug. They might not want to have any direct involvement with technology, but the ship itself has so much built into it that it needs to be up and functioning. So that's why we try to avoid any kind of outages or downtime, because we don't want people to have that bad experience. Because Carnival is all about fun. That's their number one priority, and that gets trickled down all the way through. So everything that we do is, even in IT, is all strictly around customer satisfaction and giving our guests those best experiences possible.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about money being one of the most important things for you, and fun and customer satisfaction. For us, our money, our customer satisfaction is the content that we receive, we manipulate, and we redeliver. So for us, it's very important that our systems can take in that content. And then for us in our TV facility, we have edit stations that utilize the network switches, the network gear, the network infrastructure that we have. So we absolutely need to make sure that it is as robust as possible, and we're constantly performing all metrics internally. I know I talked about what happens when we can't deliver outside of our network, but what happens inside is just equally as important for us, because when we receive content from a show, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or WrestleMania, it is our team's job to make sure that the editors and all the post-production analysts and graphic designers can take that content, do what they need to do to edit it. Sometimes that's adding graphic overlays, sometimes that's adding different languages and on audio files, and doing that as fast as possible, because, to be honest, our fan base is quite rabid. They want that content as fast as possible, especially when it comes in right after a show. So how fast can we deliver it out? Because if we don't do it by a certain time, whether that's an SLA with one of our partners, whether that's just individuals or our fans on YouTube or social media platforms wanting that next version of the content that they expect, if we don't get that out in time, that's a loss of money for us as well.
Let's have a little bit of a debate. So if you think about dealing with a performance issue, which is more important, speed or transparency?
I think for us, it's transparency. Customers understand if there's a problem, and we're communicating with them and telling them what's going on. I mean, obviously we're not getting them the nitty-gritty details of what's happening, because sometimes we can't. But being open and honest about what's happening, because they're trusting us. They could be trusting us with millions or even more dollars. So they have to have trust in us.
I almost would somewhat disagree with that from our aspect of it, because our customers are going to want speed. And I think you mentioned this with your customers as well, but if you're going to make a dinner reservation, there shouldn't be any kind of delay in that. So, I mean, if the system's if you're going to register in the system that you're making a dinner reservation for 6 o'clock, that needs to be in the system as fast as possible, and, not be any sort of delay with that.
Yeah, I think for us it's a combination. So internally for our team, we have a great small team, like I mentioned. So transparency amongst that team, even when it parlays into who we're working with at the truck, is very important, because in order for us to be transparent and relaying information from our side to their side, it just makes the process more understanding if there is a problem. Now, like as I mentioned before, when we start talking about does that content get out of our system to our fan base, speed is paramount. They don't care what's going on. They just want to get that wrestling footage as fast as possible on their platform.
Right.
What about one thing that you wish that your teams, your leadership understood better about digital resilience?
I think for us at WWE, digital resilience means what can you do to be more proactive. I think that what that means for us in our leadership is, what are the systems that we have in place? What are we currently utilizing, and are we utilizing it to its maximum efficiency? And when you look at executive reports and things of that nature, that's where these systems that we use, these tools that we use, need to have the capability and function to do that. So for us, like I said, we use Thousand Eyes. We also use Nexus Dashboard. They have functions in which we can generate these reports and say, hey, here is everything that we monitor from A to Z in our environment. Are we doing everything that we can with this software to alert us when there is an issue that's possible? And then these reports can be fed back up and say, yes, this software, this program that we're using that's validated in our hardware is working. So for us, I think the resiliency is, what's the mean time to detection, and how much have we been doing it with what we purchased and we are using in our environment?
Is that something that you look at with leadership, that they are looking at on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think the basis is, as much as we're able to communicate with them, on a technical level and a more internal level, we have those discussions more frequently. But it's just to be able to show someone who is outside of our department or a stakeholder that information is something that we do, somewhat regularly, just to say, we're validating the spend that we're putting in our environment.
How about you, Evan?
I think for us, being a bank, no problem spending money appropriately, but it's not always about financials. I mean, we can roll out a new product, but staff-wise, I need staff to be able to do that, which is a good conversation I'm having right now with them. Being able to have the support, both the financial and the staffing, to be able to do stuff is a big deal.
Makes sense. How about you, Dexter?
Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. What do you? What's one thing that you wish your teams or leadership understood better about digital resilience?
I mean, so for us, digital resiliency is really, once again, automation is the heart of our team. So it's all about that cross collaboration with the other network teams. Because we have various network teams. My team focuses strictly on network automation, but we have other architects, operations, teams specific to WAN. So we have a lot of these different teams that need to be able to communicate with each other, and you really have to understand from one team to the next what's important to you, what's important to the other team, so that for us, for the automation team, that we can help supply you with whatever tools you might need as far as automation goes. So it really comes down to cross collaboration, I think.
And what about if you had a budget increase? So let's say tomorrow you get a budget increase. What would your top priority be for where you would invest it related to digital resilience?
I mean, for me, I think that we've got a lot of the toys, so we've got all the automation platforms. But I think really training would be a big thing. So if we could apply the knowledge and spread it out through all of the other teams, because network automation isn't still widely adopted in a lot of places, and we see that at Carnival as well. So between some of our other teams, they might not quite be on board with it as much because it's unfamiliar. So I think that having a bigger budget and applying that budget towards getting the training and the resources to help the other teams better understand, because the time that they need to dedicate for that training is not something that they can necessarily give up. So maybe with more staffing, I mean, I guess you could say you could apply it towards that, but a bigger staff would free up some hours for other people to get training on automations and try to help each other in that sense.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Dexter. So if there is a budget increase, which would be fascinating, I think something that we'd have to look at is training. And I know Cisco has a lot of available options with Cisco U, which we utilize very well in our environment. But that goes back to reporting as well. So if there's something that we can, say to our leadership team that, hey, here's a report, and let's say there's something negative in regards to what's going on with some of our equipment that we're using, we can say, with this new budget, what can we do to enhance that? And then we can look at possibly staying in a single pane of glass, hopefully, with a Cisco product, maybe bring that in, and then hopefully, that allows us to train beyond what we currently have and train to a new realm of application or software that can help resolve that issue that we might be having, whether that's on a security front, maybe an automation for us. We don't do a lot of automation right now. And that could be a possibility for us to enhance what we currently have. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
Exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily about training on the systems that maybe you already have or you're familiar with, because, I mean, we're all experts in our own right, but it's more along the lines of training in platforms that maybe you don't even have that you would like to, or something that maybe another team has strict access over that you don't. So I think that the cross collaboration and training aspect, it'd be a big thing, a big bonus for that bonus increase.
What do you see, Evan? Do you see anything different that you would spend some extra money on?
Training is a good thing. Staffing is also another one. I kind of see some of the items that we're looking at from resiliencies. As I talked before about that internal communication, being able to deliver it. That brings in new services. Well, with new services, the in-house staff that's already there may not have the expertise, and it's going to have to be care and fed. So even if you bring in a third party that has that expertise, they leave, and I need people that can actually support that. So bringing in more staffing that can do that, training the ones that are in there already is also a great idea.
Now, one of the big things related to training is also with AI and how you're leveraging AI. I know, Evan, you talked a lot, or Dexter, sorry, you talked a lot about the automation side of things, but how are you looking at AI and bringing that to help the teams from a resilience standpoint?
We've already brought in AI. So we have Enterprise ChatGPT license through Microsoft. We have Copilot. We use those tools a lot. We actually have an internal team that looked at AI and said, okay, how can we use it? Not just IT, but also sales and loans and everyone else. Where can we use AI? It's something that the way I feel about AI, and I think others do, is that it's a useful tool. It can get you part of the way there. You don't want to use AI for everything. I don't want to go to ChatGPT and say, give me this, and it's going to spit out, good, I'm done. You're not done. I've written documents where I've gone to Copilot and said, okay, give me, for instance, an ITIL document on change management, and it spits it out. I'm 50, 60% of the way there. I still need to do work, but I can use AI to get there. I'm not staring at a blank page anymore.
Yeah. For us at WWE, AI is something that we're constantly looking at. It's one of those things that we say internally, what can we do to be ready for, in the future? We are very heavy on data center. We have a big data center footprint, especially in comparison to other departments that we work with and other organizations. But for us, it's kind of saying, when we look at creating our content, there's a lot of applications that we use that can enhance that content or do it quicker. So, it's funny that you say staff is a big thing for you. You look at AI, maybe it's a little bit of a button heads between staff and what can be done automatically for you or artificially. But for us at WWE, we want to be at the forefront of if we do make that move, because again, we've been in the data center for so long, and historically, we have so much storage and systems that we just don't really see moving out to the cloud or being automated in a certain way. But you just never know with advancements in technology. And a lot of the things that they're showing here at Cisco Live is saying, well, what can you do in terms of utilizing other vendors to help enhance that AI with the NVIDIA stack? So for us, that kind of leads us to say, well, we have our editors, we have our video editors and graphic artists, and they use a render farm that is located in our data center. But what if there's a way that we can touch on AI to that as well? So that kind of changes the whole game for us. So not only does that change that from an an availability standpoint and automation, but also we have to look at it from a security perspective, which is something that I think a lot of people don't look at. So when you say 50 to 60%, you're right. You could say you're doing this, but what is the other, 40% that you have to add on the end from a technical standpoint? So long story short, there's a lot to be said and a lot to think about for AI in our environment, but it's exciting to research that.
Yeah, to that point, AI, it's not going to replace people. I don't see that happening. I think people need to, work smarter, and they may need to change a little bit. But AI is there to help. Exactly. You can start the process with AI. A lot of menial tasks can get done that way. Great tool, but people still need to work, and we still need the staff to do the rest of the work.
And training.
Yes.
All right, we're going to do a little bit of rapid fire because we're getting close to the end of our time here. So, rapid fire, what is the worst case outage scenario that you never want to have happen again?
Well,
or do we not want to talk about
unfortunately, I'm thinking about it. I hope that's not bad, but so for us, when we're out at a venue across the United States or internationally now, we're doing a lot more international shows. The worst case scenario is, if all of your data connections are somehow severed. Fortunately for us, we do have satellite trucks that travel with us, so we are able to get data across, but satellite communications is very expensive. But ultimately, that would be a worst case scenario. So hopefully that never happens.
Dexter, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. We're very reliant on satellite, so it hasn't happened. But yeah, total loss of communication with the ship, that would be terrible. But yeah, we want to do everything we can to put in those resilient systems to avoid that.
Yeah. Say not at my current company, but a previous company, we had our third-party data center go down due to a power issue, and it caused all the customers to go down.
That's rough.
I can say that I've experienced that at another place I've worked before, closer towards the Gulf Coast. So we had a hurricane come through, take the top off of one of the buildings, and flood the entire data center. And so much so that the water levels rised to where it actually submerged the power cables for the core, and everything just scorched. It was a total loss. So different company, but yeah, I've experienced a total loss before, and it was bad.
It almost makes that vacation, again, call it a vacation question, seem obsolete.
Yeah.
That's why we closed with this. But yeah, it's and it is. There's so much that can go wrong, and obviously there's so much that you all do with your teams to try to avoid those things. But yeah, that is a lot that you've all been through too and dealt with, and hopefully we'll never have to again too. So, last rapid fire question. What do you think is the most important tech in your stack when you think of the resiliency that you need to deliver?
Yeah, I think for us, as I mentioned, data center and the footprint that we have there, our network switches and the resiliency and the throughput and bandwidth, and the fact that we can just have multiple port channels and expand that bandwidth in an instant, especially in the way that we're going with working with lots of other partners. Our parent group TKO we just also have acquired MLS production studios in our building in Stamford, Connecticut. So there's a lot of a heavier load in our data center. So making sure that our data center footprint is resilient is incredibly important for us.
I'm completely biased in saying this, but automations, that to us is like the forefront of everything for my team anyway. So, we want to be able to build tools that help enable the other teams, whether it's on the forefront or a remediation of a problem, one way or another. So we want to make automations the main focus of how to accomplish something that might be more complex than it needs to be. Put it that way.
If I have to go technology, I think for us it's the data, being able to use the data. So having a good SIEM that can we can query real easy and quickly to get that information. But from a non-tech answer, good staff. Because data is great, but if you don't have people acting on it properly, they don't know how to read it, they're not trained well, garbage in, garbage out.
Definitely. Well, that's going to wrap up our time today. So first of all, I want to thank you all for joining and sharing your stories and hearing a bit more about what you're doing, what your companies are doing, how you're using the technology, what you're seeing in your organizations has been really helpful to hear, and just the differences too, the differences and similarities that you face. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us and share that. And for those of you who have been watching, thank you for joining us. This has been Tech Unscripted, where real people solve real problems. So until next time, thanks for joining us.